The scene opens at Odaiba, where a massive climbing wall has been erected in an open-air arena packed with spectators, as a tattooed arm raises triumphantly. A challenge match against the world champion is underway. The open entry challenger is already halfway up the wall, while the champion, in a suit, stands calmly at the base. The challenger struggles, but makes steady upward progress, while a commentator notes the champion is simply watching. Remarkably, the champion is wearing a full business suit. The champion, Scott Harris, calmly dusts his hands with chalk as the crowd watches in anticipation. The challenger is less than 3 meters from the goal panel. Harris grabs the first hold with one hand while still in his suit, then begins climbing in his dress shoes. The crowd erupts in shock. Harris ascends at a ridiculous speed, rapidly overtaking the challenger who had a massive head start. Harris moves up the wall as if running, his hands and feet hitting holds with explosive force, leaving the commentator screaming in disbelief. Both climbers reach the top. Harris slams the goal panel and secures his victory with a dramatic leap, while the challenger looks on in stunned silence. The crowd goes wild as Harris is revealed as the world's greatest climber. He beats the open entry participant in a handicap match, once again proving his superhuman ability. A new challenger steps forward from the audience, a young, intense-looking man with wild hair, surprising everyone, including the old man beside him. The young challenger makes a deal with an elderly man. If he wins, the old man must keep their promise and connect him with the second Nomi no Sukune. The crowd is amazed he steps up after witnessing Harris's superhuman display. The muscular young challenger gears up at the wall, drawing uneasy murmurs from the crowd about his physique. Harris watches with quiet curiosity. Both parties stand by as the match begins. The young challenger drops into a deep crouching stance, puzzling the audience before the start signal fires. The challenger explodes upward with shocking speed and raw power, digging his fingers into holds and rocketing up the wall, leaving Harris's team wide-eyed. Despite the challenger's incredible spring and raw strength, Harris keeps pace. Both men race upward at breakneck speed as the crowd watches in awe. The crowd gasps as the boy climbs with terrifying intensity. Even Harris's team is stunned, wondering who this young man really is. Harris shifts into serious mode, pressing his hand hard into the wall with full force, but the challenger continues to keep up, or even pull slightly ahead. The challenger wins. Harris falls short of the panel, losing in a stunning upset. Harris, ever composed, simply smiles as if it were nothing, while the crowd erupts. The two shake hands as Harris vows personal revenge. The old man grins knowingly as the challenger's enormous, powerful hand is shown in close-up. Another challenger immediately steps forward. A humongous man in a knit cap raises his hand from the crowd, shocking everyone with his sheer size. Chapter 4 opens with the massive new challenger stepping forward, dwarfing everyone around him as the crowd erupts in shock, wondering what kind of person he is. The giant stands face to face with Harris and the previous challenger. The sheer size difference is staggering, with the big man towering over both of them terrifyingly. A close-up of the giant's calm, almost serene face as he simply says, "Hello." A reporter approaches with a microphone, marveling at his size and asking how tall he is. The giant casually reveals he is over 2 meters tall. The crowd murmurs in awe, while Harris and the young challenger watch closely. The reporter exclaims he is madly built, focusing on his enormous physique. Asked how much he weighs, the giant replies he is fairly heavy and doesn't weigh himself often. His face is sharp and composed, and the old man and young challenger exchange glances with visible tension. The reporter awkwardly suggests the giant doesn't seem suited for climbing, given his massive build. The giant gazes calmly at the wall from below, as if sizing it up.
Staff attempt to hand him a safety harness, doubtful it will even fit. The giant simply says he'll be all right and declines, while the staff member looks puzzled.
The giant outright refuses the safety harness, turning his back on the staff. The crowd is shocked. The young challenger watches with narrowed eyes as the giant faces the wall. In front of the wall, the giant crouches deeply into what looks like a sumo stance. The crowd murmurs in confusion, noting it is nothing like a climbing stance and speculating it resembles sumo wrestling.
The giant grabs a hold with one enormous hand. Close-up shots emphasize his impossibly thick, burly arm as the crowd looks on in stunned disbelief. Staff continue pleading with him to wear the harness, insisting it's dangerous, but the giant ignores them. Harris smiles knowingly, the old man stares wide-eyed, and the young challenger watches with intensity. A full-page dramatic panel shows the giant launching himself up the wall with explosive, raw power, his entire massive body surging upward with terrifying force, leaving motion trails across the surface. Every observer, spectators, staff, the old man, the young challenger, watches in wide-eyed shock and disbelief as the giant climbs the wall with an otherworldly leap, smoke trailing behind him. Two close-up impact panels show the sheer explosive force of his movement, his hand and body crashing into the wall with incredible power as he ascends. A wide shot reveals the giant already high on the wall, trailing smoke and debris. The crowd below screams, "What just happened?" as even Harris and the previous challenger stand motionless in disbelief. Close-up panels show his fists and head smashing into the wall surface with bone-crushing force as he catapults upward, followed by a final shot of the empty starting platform below, radiating shock lines. A dramatic page captures the giant's massive body crashing into the top of the wall, his sheer momentum and bulk creating a violent impact as he slams into the ceiling area with a thunderous "Whoa!" A wide shot shows the giant has smashed all the way into the very top of the wall, cracking it on impact. Everyone below stares up, speechless, with the young challenger visibly shaken and asking what on earth just happened. The aftermath? The giant crouches at the base of the wall, steam rising off his body from the sheer exertion. He calmly comments he thought he could do it in 2 steps, as Harris and the previous challenger stare in stunned silence. The two challengers face each other. The young man says, "You really are Nomi-san," finally confirming the giant's identity, while the young challenger's coach looks on in total bewilderment, asking again what just happened. Chapter 5 opens with the young challenger confirming the giant's identity as Nomi-san. The giant stands calmly, barefoot, as Harris and the young man face him after the shocking wall demonstration. The giant asks the young challenger how he knows who he is, then observes that the young man's movements on the wall were sumo-like, implying he recognized a kindred spirit in the climbing technique. The giant presses further, asking where exactly in his climb the young man saw kakuriki, hidden strength, clarifying it wasn't the climbing itself, but rather the brief moment when the young challenger hung by one hand, then pulled his own body up and launched into the air. The young challenger calls this technique very sumo-like and asks if Nomi is also a rikishi, sumo wrestler. A flashback panel depicts a legendary tachi-ai, initial charge, clash between 2 massive sumo titans, described as being in the realm of legends, hinting at Nomi's extraordinary background. Another flashback shows 2 colossal sumo wrestlers locked in a deathmatch-level tachi-ai, with the young challenger suggesting that if one calls that kind of primal clash sumo, then maybe Nomi could be called a rikishi. Nomi listens calmly, his expression unreadable. The young challenger admits that maybe he himself could be called a rikishi too. Nomi stares and simply replies, "I thought so," before telling the young man to show him something.
sparking Nomi's interest.
The young challenger asks Nomi what he wants to see. Nomi tells him to show him something, saying he stands guarding a god for a reason, hinting at a deep and mysterious purpose behind his presence. Nomi's face fills the bottom panel with quiet intensity.
Nomi cracks his knuckles and says, "Very well," as Harris, the old man, and the staff watch in anticipation. The crowd gasps as Nomi prepares to demonstrate something beyond what anyone has seen. A massive close-up of Nomi's fist precedes a breathtaking full-page panel showing Nomi crouched low in a perfect sumo tachi-ai stance, fists and bare feet planted on the ground, his entire body coiled with terrifying force like a compressed spring. 3 dramatic panels escalate the tension. First, a close-up of Nomi's fist slamming the ground with explosive force. Then, a wide-eyed, radiating close-up of Nomi's intense face bearing down with total focus, followed by the entire crowd watching in stunned, breathless silence. A full-page action panel erupts as Nomi launches into a thunderous tachi-ai charge, his massive body exploding forward with earth-shattering force, a roar bursting from him, his feet tearing up the ground as he surges ahead with the raw power of a legend. The crowd murmurs in confusion. They heard a deep, booming sound like dawn, describing it as the sound of heads clashing. The old man confirms he definitely heard it too. Spectators discuss the sound in disbelief, and the final panel reveals a blurred, trembling close-up of what appears to be Nomi's bald head mid-collision. Nomi stands in a low crouch with fists clenched, steam rising off his body. The crowd murmurs in confusion, calling it shadow sumo or one-man sumo, unsure what they just witnessed as he simply stopped there. Nomi slowly turns his head and looks directly toward the crowd. The spectators flinch and whisper nervously, wondering if he heard their comments. The young challenger's eyes go wide with a startled blank as something invisible begins to ripple in the air. A ghostly, swirling energy, described with the Japanese yura, drifts visibly through the air next to Nomi's face, confusing the young challenger who sees it with question marks. Then suddenly, the challenger recognizes it and cries out, "An oicho!" The top-knot hairstyle of a yokozuna, the highest rank in sumo. A full-page panel reveals that Nomi is grappling with an invisible opponent, his massive arms wrapped in a tight clinch around what appears to be the ghostly form of another sumo wrestler. The crowd erupts in shock, asking, "There's another person! There's somebody there! Who is it?" 2 dramatic close-up panels show the invisible opponent's enormous hands locked in a grip with Nomi, followed by a blurred, speed-lined face of the phantom figure. Its presence is overwhelming, suggesting it is a legendary, otherworldly force.
A massive double spread erupts as Nomi roars and executes a thunderous uwatanage overarm throw. His invisible opponent is hurled sideways with a cyclone of force, while the left panels show Nomi's feet stomping and his face contorted in absolute ferocity. The entire crowd recoils backward in a massive wave of shock. Hundreds of people are staggered or knocked off their feet by the shockwave of Nomi's display. 2 student journalists who witnessed it are shown pointing excitedly, exclaiming they saw it and confirming journalism was done on the scene. The 2 student journalists excitedly debate who Nomi was fighting against. One of them blurts out, "A yokozuna!" And they both confirm each other's account with explosive energy, establishing that they got crucial information about what happened. A breathtaking wide-panel spread shows the entire crowd has been sent sprawling across the ground in every direction by the invisible shockwave of Nomi's throw. Nomi himself walks away calmly in the top right corner, while the old man, the young challenger, and Harris stare in stunned disbelief at the scene of mass collapse. The chapter closes as the young challenger confronts Nomi, telling him that wasn't one-man sumo, that was a real tachi-ai.
Nomi calmly replies, and adds with devastating composure that the challenger's shiko, sumo stomping, is just a little lacking. A final humbling critique that ends the chapter on a note of awe and sets the stage for what comes next.
The scene shifts entirely. The setting is now a karate dojo called Shin Shinkai-kan Honbu. A recap caption summarizes earlier events, and the lower panels show shrine plaques reading Kashima Daimyojin and Katori Daimyojin, with a prayer bead rosary resting nearby. Inside the dojo, a large man in a gi stands at the center of the training floor, while rows of students kneel on both sides in respectful silence. 2 rows of tough-looking karateka fill the lower panels, all watching with intense, hardened expressions. 2 fighters are introduced in close-up. On the left, Katu Kiyosumi, Karate-Do 4th Dan, sharp-eyed and fierce. On the right, Orochi Doppo, Karate-Do 10th Dan, a massive, scarred veteran wearing an eye patch, radiating overwhelming authority. The match begins with a shout of "Begin!" Kato instantly launches a spinning kick with explosive speed as Doppo stands his ground. A wide panel shows Kato airborne and unleashing a flurry of rapid strikes as the students watch in awe. The spectators react with shock as the 2 fighters close the distance. Doppo's massive fist is shown in front of the shrine plaque, Katori, and dual close-up panels show both men locking eyes with absolute killing intent. A speed blur panel closes with Doppo's fist hurtling forward. A devastating collision occurs. Katu's strike meets Doppo's deflecting arm with a loud crack. The spectators flinch in disbelief, and Doppo's single eye stares forward in cold, unflinching focus as the impact reverberates through the dojo. Doppo catches Katu's spinning kick and uses the momentum against him. A top panel shows the foot being seized mid-spin, followed by a full-page panel of Doppo hurling Katu in a massive circular throw, his gi billowing as he spins Katu like a weapon. Katu is sent flying completely off his feet and nearly airborne inside the dojo. A full-page top panel shows him launched upward toward the ceiling. The bottom panel is a close-up of Doppo's scarred face immediately after the throw, expression stone cold. Impact panels show Doppo's fist smashing downward with bone-crushing force as students nearby flinch in shock. The bottom panels reveal Doppo's enormous knuckles in close-up, followed by a drooling, blank-eyed close-up of Katu's face, clearly knocked unconscious. With a thunderous boom, Doppo drives Kato into the floor. Kato's limp body crashes down hard as shocked students scramble back. The lower panels show rows of karateka faces frozen in speechless, pale-faced horror at what they have just witnessed. Doppo's scarred face is shown in extreme close-up, blank and composed. Then a calm wide shot shows him seated cross-legged before the assembled students as he begins to speak about what makes Karate-Do what it is, its social value as physical maintenance, and its secondary effect as character building. Doppo cuts through the platitudes, saying it all sounds nice, but is dressed up in fancy words. He then declares that in the end, the ultimate significance of the bare-handed martial art karate is something else entirely, as his students lean in to hear the answer. Doppo answers with blunt finality. Its ultimate significance is that it makes you good in brawls, beatdowns in bars and streets, and in muddy, real combat, you alone have clear control. A massive close-up of his fist fills the top panel, and his grinning face drives the point home. All it is this. Doppo continues, dismissing the objection, "Isn't there more to it?" and the idea that whatever goes as long as you're strong. He simply replies, "Being strong's all that matters," silencing any debate. A student reacts with anger, while others look on in stunned disbelief. The students laugh and murmur at his brutal honesty. Doppo smiles knowingly and delivers his philosophy. You are always told nothing but lies out loud, and the truth is what is whispered to you quietly.
The hall fills with a mixture of laughter, awe, and knowing grins.
The scene cuts to the director's private office. The young challenger sits across from Doppo and Kato over tea. Doppo reflects that while Kato earned a private kumite, it was wrong of Kato to aim for his one remaining eye, even if it was just training.
Kato shows his bandaged fingers with a grin, defending himself by saying that in kumite, you don't hold back, even for your parent, and that Doppo himself taught him this. Doppo grimly concedes, "I'm a sicko too," then dismisses Kato by saying he is wasting his time here. The young challenger watches quietly.
Kato smirks, saying it would have been great if he had landed a finger or two on Doppo. The dojo exterior is shown. Then Doppo turns to the young challenger and simply asks, "Sumo?" The challenger confirms it, and the conversation shifts as Doppo admits he knows how sudden the request must seem.
The young challenger formally states his purpose. He is here to hear the perspective of the legendary 10th Dan karateka Orochi Doppo on sumo. He leans forward and says simply, "Please, tell me." Doppo pauses, his expression unreadable, and replies, "Well."
Doppo decides to speak. Guess I've got to say it. Both the young challenger and Kato lean in intently. Doppo opens his mouth and begins. Truth is, I've avoided looking at their world, confessing for the first time that he has deliberately stayed away from the world of sumo.
Doppo continues his monologue, saying karateka have a bad lot. They are required to look at everything in the world as an enemy. A bird's eye view shows him and the young challenger seated in the office with a table between them, as the challenger listens intently. Doppo expands on the point. This adversarial mindset applies not just to karate, but to boxing, Muay Thai, judo, kenpo, and every other one-on-one martial art. Illustrated panels show fighters from each discipline clashing, while Doppo's scarred face closes the page with the warning that it extends beyond solo combat. The list grows even broader. Football players, rugby players, weightlifters, and then moving into street-level threats. Steel pipes, blades, groups of people, street fighters, and braggarts. Karateka must be mentally prepared to face all of these as potential enemies. Doppo delivers his core conclusion. Honestly, the real thing for martial artists isn't sanctioned matches. It's the conflicts that spring up in daily life, in streets and bars. For martial artists, that is the real deal. And his single eye stares forward with absolute conviction. Then Doppo pivots. He says that in the opposite direction, there is sumo. All three men react with focused attention, and a wide overhead view of a sumo arena shows two rikishi poised across from each other in the dojo, while Doppo concludes their genre is totally completed.
Doppo elaborates on sumo's unique position. No rikishi sweats thinking about a street brawl. Unlike karateka, who must constantly prove themselves against fighters from other genres, rikishi don't need to. Within the space called the dohyo, everything gets finished. The young challenger leans in. Doppo pauses mid-sentence and trails off with, "And?" The challenger prompts, "It's kind of hard to say, is it?" And Doppo, after a moment, gives his blunt verdict. Simply put, it's that they're strong. A steaming cup of tea sits to the side as the weight of the admission settles. Doppo continues his description of the sumo system. They recruit huge, bad, violent kids from all over the country, house them in heias under supervision, make them eat non-stop, put them through intensive training, and even have them take naps to maximize their physical growth. Kato asks with a smirk, "Sumo? Strong?" And Doppo simply replies, Two close-up panels of Doppo's eye patch face show him thinking it over carefully. Then he looks directly at the challenger and says with a knowing smile, "You don't get it." Doppo stands up and begins demonstrating, explaining that in sumo there are no fist strikes, showing a close-up of his own massive fist as an example. and that there are no kicks and no little tricks either. Katu reacts with wide eyes as the point lands. Doppo continues, no ground fighting either. Sumo may often have the image of a tame herbivore, but the young challenger interjects, meaning that Sumo? And Doppo finishes the thought with a grin, saying it would be a hell of a herbivore. The bottom panel erupts with the image of a massive, charging wild bison to drive the metaphor home. The physical reality of sumo is laid out in striking visuals. Their average weight is over 160 kilograms. They exhaust every gram of stamina they possess in 10 to 20 seconds. The bottom panel depicts this as furious 10-second-long waves crashing with overwhelming force.
Doppo turns to Katu and says, "How about it? Want to give it a go?" Then explains to the challenger, "You want to learn about sumo, don't you?" He tells Katu to come at him using karate, while the young challenger, now revealed to be Baki, watches from the side.
Doppo grins and tells Kato to use whatever he wants. Eye pokes, kicks to the groin, anything. And Kato smirks back, saying he doesn't need to be told, adding that's the sort of thing karate is. A wide shot shows Doppo crouched low and Kato approaching as the two face off again. The three men take positions in the dojo in front of the shrine plaques. Katu spreads his legs wide in a fighting stance and asks, "When are we starting?" And Doppo, with a terrifying smile, answers, "It's already," implying the fight has already begun, without Katu realizing it. A breathtaking double-page spread captures the clash. Katu screams, "Okay, yeah!" and launches himself horizontally at full speed directly at Doppo, who crouches low and absorbs the incoming attack with his sumo-rooted stance, the whole scene erupting in motion lines and explosive energy. The impact is devastating. Kato is blasted sideways and sent skidding across the floor in a full-body crash landing, his body bouncing off the ground with a "Oisa!" as the left panels show the brutal collision, Doppo's unmoved stance, and Kato's face going completely blank on impact. The young challenger, Baki, stares with wide, trembling eyes, completely overwhelmed by what he has just witnessed. Doppo turns to him and asks, "What do you think, Baki?" As a giant close-up of a stunned eye fills the panel with the realization that was sumo. Doppo then grins and asks Baki directly, "Want to give it a try?" A scarred sumo wrestler with an eye patch challenges Baki to a sumo match. Baki hesitates, but doesn't refuse outright. A muscular fighter is sent crashing to the floor with tremendous force. Close-ups show the impact and a shop sign outside. The downed fighter asks what hit him. The sumo wrestler reveals his massive hands and explains it was a two-handed thrust. The wrestler explains sumo's rules. No fists, no groin kicks, no vital strikes, only open-hand pushing techniques, demonstrating the philosophy of the art. The wrestler argues sumo techniques may seem dull and defanged, but he sees it differently. Sumo's Kimarite number 48 official winning moves. A full splash page illustrating all the sumo Kimarite techniques with small figures. The wrestler notes that counting reverses, the total reaches 96. The wrestler argues sumo's 2,000-year history has real fangs. He points out that grand sumo matches end in just 10 to 20 seconds, no wasted motion. The wrestler explains that sumo's long history has distilled only the most effective techniques. Baki, satisfied that Kato is okay, accepts the match challenge. Both fighters face each other in a shrine room. A tense standoff begins as they crouch into starting positions opposite one another. The wrestler urges Baki to take sumo seriously as a rare opportunity. Baki removes his belt, and both men face off in the dojo, with a referee seated between them. The fight begins. Baki charges with explosive intent, his body described as having reached liquid levels of muscle relaxation for maximum output, his eyes sharp and focused. Baki's body is shown fully liquefied with effort as he launches a devastating charge.
The impact sends shockwaves across the floor in a dramatic double-page spread. The clash is ferocious. The wrestler grabs Baki mid-charge, and the two grapple violently, with Baki wide-eyed at the sheer power being exerted against him.
The wrestler praises Baki's tachiai, initial charge, as worthy of Hanma Baki. He notes that on a proper dohyo ring, it would count as yorikiri, or oshidashi, push-out wins.
Baki finds himself caught in a kanuki joint lock technique. The wrestler comments it's a superb locking move, as Baki's fingers are bent back and controlled. The wrestler overpowers Baki with a massive full-body drive, sending him flying through the air. Baki's eyes go wide with shock at the force.
A wide shot shows Baki airborne across the entire dojo. The wrestler identifies the technique as tsukidashi, thrust out, confirming it as a legitimate sumo move as onlookers watch in awe. Baki lands and marvels that it actually works. Outside, a sign for Orochi Doppo's karate headquarters is shown, and the chapter closes, hinting at a palm heel strike connection, a simple but powerful technique.
Chapter 9 opens, titled Ugly Feet. People walk outside a large walled compound. Birds suddenly scatter from the roof as something dramatic occurs within.
An elderly man in a kimono is startled by what feels like an earthquake. The building shakes violently, and he reacts in shock, trying to understand what is happening.
The old man looks up in stunned disbelief as a massive, steaming foot fills the frame. Something inhuman has just stomped the ground nearby with terrifying force.
A full-page reveal. An enormous, hyper-muscular sumo wrestler performs the Shiko stomping ritual outdoors, his body generating steam and crackling energy with each impact. The narration notes it resembled sumo's Shiko. Close-up of the colossal foot, mid-stamp. The old man watches in wide-eyed horror, asking himself whether what he's seeing is actually supposed to be Shiko at all.
A dramatic double-page spread. The sumo wrestler slams his foot into the earth with earth-shattering force, sending gravel and debris flying in all directions.
The old man's face fills the frame in shock. The building exterior is shown rattling from the impact. A new character is introduced, Kanu Shume, captain of the Tokugawa Estate Guard, watching the wrestler train in the garden. Kano tells someone at a cafe that he witnessed sumo's Shiko performed right in front of him. He struggles to process it, repeatedly questioning whether what he saw was truly Shiko or something else entirely.
A wide double-page spread shows the wrestler's enormous, boulder-like back as he crouches low in a sumo stance, steam rising from the ground and his body all around him.
Extreme close-ups of the wrestler's grotesquely thick, cracked feet and ankles. Steam and gravel coat every surface. The wrestler mutters, "Shiko, huh?" to himself as he finishes.
The wrestler's face is shown in a calm, confident close-up. The old man watches in shock from the building. The wrestler begins moving again with explosive momentum, and the caption reads, "It isn't Shiko." The wrestler stands tall and imposing in full view, declaring that what he just performed is called Shikoashi, a distinct and different movement from ordinary Shiko. The ground shows a massive, deeply imprinted footprint in the gravel. A translator's note confirms the word reads Shikoashi. The wrestler explains that Shiko is written with the character meaning unpleasant to look at. The wrestler elaborates, Shiko also carries the meaning of strength or sturdiness. The act of stamping, Shikoashi, kicks and purifies the earth beneath, subduing it. The wrestler explains the spiritual purpose. Stamping drives away evil spirits residing in the ground, and the souls sink deep into the earth. It is a form of jichin, ground-purifying ritual. The old man thanks him, and the wrestler humbly replies it was the least he could do. The wrestler turns to ask Tokugawa what kind of competition he'll be entering. Tokugawa, with a sly expression, turns the question back, asking what sort of opposition the wrestler wishes to face.
The wrestler pauses thoughtfully, then declares with quiet intensity that he seeks wholehearted contests of strength, pure power against power, no tricks or gamesmanship.
Close-up of the wrestler's face as he clarifies, his power must be tested against the mighty. Tokugawa smiles knowingly. The scene cuts to a heavily guarded foreign facility, searchlights, armed soldiers, a watchtower, hinting at something ominous brewing abroad.
Inside what appears to be a lavish dining setting, a uniformed attendant informs someone that Tokyo has made contact and addresses them as Mr. Unchained. A massive figure eating at the table turns, and a close-up reveals a large, glasses-wearing man with a sinister smirk, who responds with a cool, my. A new antagonist is introduced. Chapter 10 opens titled Mr. Unchained. A sweeping aerial view establishes the Arizona State Prison, a massive star-shaped fortress surrounded by searchlights in the American desert.
An overhead close-up reveals the prison's distinctive five-pointed layout, earning it the nickname the Black Pentagon, contrasted against the real Pentagon, which serves as the U.S. Department of Defense, shown alongside an American flag.
The narration describes this place as a gathering of criminal elites assembled from across the country. A lone guard stands before a massive vault-like door, which slowly opens via keypad. The text notes it is, of course, viciously guarded. Inside stretches a long, gleaming corridor of glass-paneled cells, a place symbolizing total loss of freedom. In one section, several dangerous-looking inmates are shown in close-up, each with a disturbing face.
Contrast, then, reveals a completely different wing. Ornate chandeliers, framed paintings, polished floors, described as a truly unthinkable area hidden within the prison, where even the antiques and paintings are said to be genuine.
Elegant double doors open to reveal a room under the dominion of a single man. Decorative lamps, plants, and a ceiling fan fill the space. An attendant enters, saying, "Feel free to doubt your ears," hinting at what's coming. The man, enormous, seated with his back to the room, eats alone at a vast circular banquet table, overflowing with food. The narration quietly reveals, it is said that the man is a prisoner. Close-up of the man's hulking back as he eats silently. The table is covered in an extraordinary spread: steak, seafood, pasta, whole roasted meats, wine. He consumes it all with bare hands, in some shots, and utensils in others. The man's face is finally shown clearly, thick-necked, bespectacled, imposing, as he eats with a fork, chews, drinks. An attendant approaches and addresses him as Mr. Unchained, delivering a message.
Mr. Unchained listens as the attendant relays that Tokyo has reached out. He responds coolly, "I'll take it later," then casually explains that eating 100,000 calories simply takes a lot of time. An absurd, menacing statement delivered with total calm. Scene shifts to a vast private library within the prison. Ceiling fans turn slowly above floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A cigar is lit, signaling the man has moved to his reading room after the meal. Mr. Unchained, now reclining in the library with a lit cigar, smugly declares he was right not to interrupt his meal. He exhales smoke, and his colossal bare foot rests in the foreground, projecting dominance and comfort. Full body shot of Mr. Unchained lounging in an armchair, surrounded by shelves, cigar in hand, legs crossed, whiskey nearby. He muses aloud with a smirk. Want a sumo fight? He reveals the details of the challenge. The opponent's name is Sukune Nomi. He takes a long drag of his cigar and dismisses the Japanese organizers with contempt, saying they actually thought he wouldn't know the name because he's American, calling them moronic. The attendant watches nervously as Mr. Unchained flicks his cigar.
A close-up of the soaring cigar is followed by a dramatic low-angle shot of his face. Massive, cold-eyed, exuding terrifying self-confidence. His enormous fist slams down with explosive force, sending shockwaves and debris flying. He straightens up and remarks calmly, "He's just like the myth, huh?" Showing he already knows who Sukune Nomi is. His two fists are shown side by side, massive and scarred. The guard trembles in fear. Mr. Unchained turns in the library and asks whether Tokyo said anything else, specifically whether they claimed Sukune Nomi is stronger than him. The guard stammers, "No, I haven't heard." The guard panics and frantically backtracks. "No, I didn't say that! I didn't say that!" Spinning in place. Mr. Unchained raises both fists in close-up, then pulls back to show his entire upper body tensing with barely contained power. In a full-page burst of action, Mr. Unchained charges the guard with explosive speed, launching a devastating body-level ram that sends the man flying backward, his hat blown off, raw violence unleashed in an instant. The guard crashes through the library, books and debris scattering everywhere. Mr. Unchained turns to him and says flatly, "Hey," then calmly announces, "I'm breaking out tomorrow. Going to Tokyo." The chapter ends with this jaw-dropping declaration, setting up his imminent arrival in Japan. The series title Baki-Dou appears as Tokugawa and his guard Kano stand by a churning koi pond. The massive koi thrash and leap violently at the surface as Kano addresses Tokugawa as Goroku. The koi are shown erupting from the water in close-up. Kanu asks if they've gotten bigger, and Tokugawa murmurs that it feels like they suddenly have. A recap note explains the previous chapter's events involving Doppo and the Sumo challenge. Tokugawa explains to Kano that this phenomenon is the jichin, the ground purification ritual, causing the koi to grow. Kano questions the term, while Tokugawa smiles, saying he told the same thing to him. Kanu silently processes who him refers to. Tokugawa explains that the sumo wrestler has been spending his days stamping on evil spirits in the earth, shown by a massive foot slamming the ground. And when the evil spirits are gone from the earth, the living beings come to be at ease and can grow, which is why the koi have swelled in size. The thrashing fish fill the panel dramatically. Tokugawa smirks while Kano stares blankly, and Tokugawa adds, "Whether or not you believe that, up to you." A breathtaking full-page vertical shot. The sumo wrestler, Sukune Nomi, holds his entire body suspended in a single-leg shiko raise, steam pouring off every muscle, a butterfly drifting nearby, an image of inhuman power and stillness combined. Close-up of the sole of Sukune's raised foot, enormous and calloused. The butterfly lands gently near his foot. Tokugawa and Kanu observe from a distance, with Kanu noting quietly, "He's not moving." Tokugawa explains that Sukune is building up ki. He spends a long time holding that agonizing position, waiting for his limbs to fill with ki energy. The wrestler's steaming, boulder-like body fills the frame. Kano notes that even ordinary shiko is quite tough when done correctly, let alone holding perfectly still at that height for an extended period. The two men watch from afar as Sukune remains motionless. A butterfly approaches and lands delicately on his raised foot. The moment of release, Sukune brings his foot crashing down with enormous force, sending gravel and shockwaves exploding outward in a dramatic double impact shot. Steam rises from the rooftop area as the impact dissipates. Both Tokugawa and Kanu stare wide-eyed. Tokugawa chuckles and mutters, "Out with the demons, eh?" While Kanu stammers, "I don't," clearly overwhelmed. The scene shifts to a gym where an enormous barbell sits on the floor. Tokugawa notes that the current world record for super heavy class weightlifting is 263 kilograms.
Sukune looks at it and asks what they want him to do with it. Tokugawa stands beside the old man, who watches with crafty eyes.
Sukune observes calmly. That's a lot of weight. Tokugawa teases with a wordplay pun about whether the weight of responsibility is too much for him. Kanu watches, stone-faced. A close-up shows the barbell plate, as Sukune says simply, "As it is, like this." Sukune crouches down low in front of the barbell, his massive body hunched over the weight. Kano and Tokugawa watch intently. Close-up panels show Sukune's fingertips gripping the bar, and he declares it is exceedingly easy to hold on to.
Full-page shot. Sukune stands upright, casually cradling the loaded barbell against his chest with one hand, barely straining, an almost casual display of superhuman strength that leaves onlookers speechless. Both Kanu and Tokugawa react in shock. He lifted it with a pinky? As Sukune turns to them with a relaxed expression and states plainly, lifting isn't a Rikishi's domain. Then, in the next instant, he hurls the barbell with explosive speed, shocking the old man into wide-eyed terror.
A dramatic full-page spread titled Chapter 11, The Domain of Sumo. The barbell rockets through the air as Sukune spins with it in a powerful whipping motion, shouting, "Oso!" Both Kano and Tokugawa stare in total disbelief at what they're witnessing. The barbell slows and settles gently into the floor, barely making a mark. Sukune looks up with a calm, confident smile and names the technique, Kubi Hineri, a neck-twisting sumo throw applied to the barbell itself. He adds it is a move that you can't use on people, closing the chapter on a note of eerie, playful menace. A double-page spread picks up mid-action. Sukune spins in a powerful low crouch, hurling the 263-kilogram barbell with a sumo throwing technique, shouting, "Aho!" A recap note confirms this follows the Jichin swollen koi scene. Tokugawa and Kano stare open-mouthed as the barbell rockets past. Close-up panels show the bar sliding smoothly along the floor and coming to rest with barely a sound, demonstrating impossible control. Sukune exhales with calm satisfaction. A wide shot shows Sukune's back, enormous and mountainous, as he stands upright, holding a barbell plate in one hand overhead effortlessly. Tokugawa and the old man are tiny figures beside him, watching in silence. Sukune names the technique Kubi Hineri, neck twist, then corrects himself, noting it's more commonly called Gasho Hineri today. He reiterates with a relaxed smile that it's really not a move you can use on people. Then Kanu addresses him, "Sukune-san," from the doorway. Kanu presses Sukune. "You say that it's a move that can't be used on humans. Then what or who would you use it on?" Sukune thinks for a moment. Then his expression becomes quietly mischievous, while Tokugawa reacts with a startled, "Oh." Sukune answers calmly, "If a god on them, I suppose? Or alternatively, if he himself were threatened by someone." Kanu processes this in stunned silence as Sukune turns away, the implication hanging in the air. They move to another room where a colossal suspended sandbag hangs from the ceiling by thick chains. Tokugawa comments these are fairly normal uses. Sukune approaches barefoot and inspects the enormous bag while its chains rattle under its weight.
Tokugawa explains it is a 240-kilogram, ultra-sized sandbag. As you can see, he begins, while Sukune stands beside it looking almost small by comparison, despite his own immense frame. The sandbag's bottom panel notes it has no mawashi, belt, to grab. Tokugawa smirks and asks what the second Nomi no Sukune would do with such a behemoth. Kanu watches intently, barely containing his excitement. Oh, my heart won't stop pounding. A wide horizontal spread, Sukune stands alone beside the enormous sandbag in the empty hall, studying it in silence, a perfectly composed image of a man sizing up an opponent.
Sukune states plainly, "Sumo can still be done without a mawashi," then adds, "but," as his foot settles firmly on the floor. In the next panel, his hands lunge forward and seize the sandbag with explosive grip.
Full-page shot. Sukune has locked his arms around the massive sandbag in a bear hug clinch, compressing it slightly with his body as steam rises. He notes with a calm smile, it gets a little bit dangerous.
Both Kano and Tokugawa react with wide-eyed alarm. Dangerous? Close-up panels show Sukune's enormous fingers digging into the surface of the sandbag, then twisting and wrenching it with terrifying force. The sandbag material tears and deforms under Sukune's grip. Kanu sweats in shock. He made a mawashi? Realizing Sukune has gripped and twisted the skin of the sandbag itself to create the equivalent of a belt hold. Sukune's grip tightens further, shredding the surface of the bag with grinding force. Kanao and Tokugawa stare pale-faced as Sukune's expression shifts into focused intensity. He is about to execute a full sumo throw. Sukune erupts into explosive motion, shouting, "No!" as he twists and hurls the sandbag in a full sumo body throw. The chains go taut, and the massive bag swings violently in a blur of speed. The chains snap and shatter under the force. Tokugawa shouts, "Sabo Ori!" recognizing the technique, while Kano stares sweating. The sandbag buckles inward from the pressure of the throw. The last panel shows the bag beginning to burst apart.
A dramatic double-page spread. The 240-kilogram sandbag explodes into thousands of fragments midair as Sukune follows through on the throw. Both Tokugawa and Kano are shown mid-face in shock and awe, respectively. One horrified, one exhilarated.
Shredded material rains down across the floor. From above, Sukune crouches amid the debris field, steam rising. Tokugawa calls out with theatrical alarm, "Whoa! Hey, Sukune-kun!" The security camera watches from the ceiling.
The final page delivers the chapter's shock ending. A massively muscular, dark-skinned man in shorts stands in the doorway, grinning broadly. It's Oliva, Mr. Unchained, who has broken out of prison and arrived in Tokyo, cheerfully announcing, "Property damage, that's a serious offense." The chapter ends with his imposing arrival.
オリバが相撲ステーブルに突撃。回しを書いてスクネ君を迎えるシーンでリングに入ります。
The old master is thrilled to see Oliva arrive, noting he even came prepared with a mawashi, while Oliva compliments Sukune on the spectacle of destroying the sandbag. Everyone is stunned and asks, "Who is this guy?" as Oliva's grotesquely massive, vein-covered physique is revealed up close. A man in a suit is overwhelmed by Oliva's body, thinking, "What the hell is that body?" as he examines the impossible musculature. Onlookers debate whether human muscles can really look like that, calling his torso shape an inverted isosceles triangle, while another corrects that it's not a triangle at all, as Oliva and Sukune face each other. The suited man, apparently a police officer, confronts Oliva, stating that the sandbag wasn't his property and he destroyed it without permission, calling it a serious crime. Sukune backs up the accusation, saying Oliva didn't even speak to the owner. The officer declares he will arrest Oliva on the spot. Chapter 13, title page, The Monstrous Strength of America's Strongest versus the second-generation Nomi no Sukune. The two giants stand facing each other as the chapter begins. Sukune casually calls Oliva slim, shocking everyone. Oliva is taken aback. Being called scrawny by someone is clearly unprecedented. Sukune also notes Oliva's Japanese is excellent for a foreigner. Sukune doubles down, stomping forward and declaring flatly,
"You're horribly skinny." A statement that shocks all witnesses, given Oliva's monstrous build.
Oliva grins, clearly amused and excited rather than offended. He says, "I'll cut this short," and begins charging at full speed towards Sukune.
Oliva lunges forward, screaming, "I'm gonna borrow your chest," holding nothing back as he rockets towards Sukune with explosive force. Oliva crashes chest first into Sukune with a plop, the collision sending shockwaves as the two titans collide at full force. The impact shocks the old master and the officer. Oliva is stunned. Pressed against Sukune's body, he realizes it doesn't feel like I'm pushing him at all. Sukune begins pushing back with terrifying force, screaming, "Fanine!" visibly straining with raw sumo strength, his back muscles rippling as he drives against Oliva. The grapple intensifies. Oliva, buried between Sukune's massive pecs, mutters, "That is powerful strength, but it isn't sumo." A spectacular double-spread clash. Both men spin and grapple violently, and Oliva appears to be getting slammed or thrown. Sukune's sumo technique is dominating even Oliva's brute power.
Sukune addresses Oliva as Gaijin-san while holding him in a grip, then delivers the chapter's closing line. An inverted triangle doesn't stand a chance against a triangle, implying sumo's low center of gravity defeats Oliva's top-heavy build. To be continued in issue 51.
Sukune has effortlessly lifted Oliva off the ground with one arm. The two titans face off as the chapter's premise is framed around the triangle and the inverted triangle.
Sukune explains that sumo is a world dominated by triangles, a wide, low center of gravity body shape, and that it is not a world where an inverted triangle, Oliva's top-heavy build, has any place. The old master has a sudden realization. The sense of disconnect he felt when the two first faced each other is now clear. Side by side, the difference in their body shapes tells the whole story. He notes, that monster, Oliva, who looked so terrifyingly monstrous in trunks, projecting overflowing bulk and raw power, somehow gave off an impression of being skinny for a Rikishi once he put on a mawashi. He felt out of place in sumo's context.
Sukune explains sumo's strict rules. Only the soles of your feet may touch the ground, not even the tops of your toes. And the dohyo is only 4.55 meters wide. If even a toe tip crosses the boundary, you lose. Under those specific conditions, an inverted triangle body shape is completely unsuited, whereas a triangle body shape with a lower center of gravity is far more advantageous for sumo combat.
Despite Oliva weighing over 140 kilograms, his tachi-ai, initial charge, was easily neutralized, perhaps due to the shortness of the distance or his relatively insufficient body weight compared to Sukune's mass. Oliva boasts back strength enough to deadlift over half a ton, yet Sukune, weighing over 200 kilograms, used immeasurable sumo technique to not allow himself to be lifted even a single millimeter. The old master is overwhelmed with awe, trembling as he repeats, "The triangle is fearsome. Sumo is fearsome. Nomi no Sukune is fearsome." Just then, a voice from off-panel calls out, "Hey!" Still grappling, Oliva asks Sukune calmly, "How long do you plan on holding me?" Sukune simply replies, "I get it," and lets go, while Sukune gives a calm, "Sorry." The tension briefly releases into a moment of mutual acknowledgement.
Oliva concedes the point gracefully. You're right. With an inverted triangle that just looks cool, I can't win against a triangle. But he immediately adds a crucial qualifier. That only goes for sumo.
Oliva grins with menace and clarifies, in a simple, no-rules free fight where you only stop when it's done, things are entirely different. His aura radiates pure predatory intent.
Oliva addresses Sukune directly, telling him the heavens are telling you something, implying Sukune's sumo body shape reflects nature's own design, while Oliva acknowledges the natural world has its own logic.
Oliva illustrates his point with examples from nature. Large prey animals with fat waists are killed by lean-waisted predators, and in the insect world, the waists of predators are always small and narrow. Nature favors the lean hunter. Even predatory insects have inverted triangle-shaped faces, Oliva notes. Sukune simply says, "I see," and then smiles, proposing, "Let's have a free fight." The officer and the old master are shocked. Really? Here? As Sukune and Oliva prepare to square off again, this time in an unrestricted bout. Sukune admits he's only familiar with sumo fighting, and Oliva grins, noting that as an American, he can't quite figure out the sumo mindset. Sukune explains that in sumo, there is no formal start signal. Fighters match their breathing and begin when both are mutually ready. The officer watches tensely as the two giants prepare to clash under these unspoken rules. A dramatic full-spread close-up. The two men's faces collide at blinding speed in the tachi-ai. Sukune's face is pressed hard, contorted under the force, as the text screams, "Like this!" The impact sends sweat and flesh flying. Oliva reacts with a cool, "Oh?" as the old master reels in shock. Oliva then grins and asks with amusement, "Was that a mata?" A false start in sumo, taunting Sukune while clearly enjoying the exchange. The chapter ends here with a note that the next issue will be on hiatus, and the one after that will have a color cover. Oliva suddenly launches a devastating punch at Sukune without warning. The title caption reads, "Oliva's unanswerable fist," as the free fight begins explosively. Sukune's face is grotesquely deformed by the impact of Oliva's punch. Blood splatters across the floor as the old master looks on in horror. Sukune, blood pouring from his mouth, calmly wipes his face. Oliva grins smugly and says, "But I'd heard there's no signal to start in sumo." And a cracking pop sound effect follows, suggesting Sukune is cracking his knuckles or joints in response. Oliva taunts, "Was that tachi-ai just now a mata?" implying Sukune flinched. But Sukune, standing bloodied and composed, replies simply, "No, I was the one who didn't match his breath." He takes full responsibility for being caught off guard. Sukune apologizes with complete dignity, even while bleeding. Oliva, visibly irritated, acknowledges, "That pisses me off. You're covered in blood, and you're still just as well-spoken." The officer and old master watch in tense silence. Sukune asks calmly whether he should have been pathetically pleading for his life instead. Oliva answers, "Don't be stupid. A plea for life isn't something made out of sense." He then explains his philosophy. You drive someone into a corner and get them to beg. Oliva continues, "Once you've driven them into that corner, even though they don't want to, they beg you. That's what that is." Sukune closes his eyes and simply says, "I understand," accepting the lesson with full composure. Sukune drops into a deep sumo crouch, still dripping blood, and says, "Please, drive me back. Hold back nothing." The officer is shocked. He's going into a free fight with sumo? While Oliva watches with calm intensity. The old master shouts with tearful excitement, "This is it! This is what I wanted to see!" As Sukune crouches in the ring, facing a boxer in full gear. The caption reads, "A rikishi who's prepared to be hit, having a cross-style match." Oliva says, "Don't have to tell me," and then warns Sukune, "Don't expect that kind of rudeness from me." His fist closes as he declares he fights with full integrity and full force.
Oliva surges forward with terrifying power, aura lines radiating off his body, as the old master watches in awe, whispering, "Wow." And the narration ponders whether or not he knows it.
That's the stance of the statue of the Congo Rikishi! Oliva's fighting pose perfectly mirrors the iconic guardian deity statue, and he grins with monstrous delight at the realization. Sukune crouches low in his sumo stance, still bleeding, staring forward with cold focus. Oliva's massive body looms in the foreground. Sukune thinks quietly. It's inevitable. A dramatic double spread. Sukune charges in a full sumo tachiai rush, low, explosive, unstoppable, while Oliva stands poised with raised fist. The caption reads, "The fight. Once you decide on a full power collision." Full double spread climax. The two bodies collide with earth-shattering force, and the text declares in massive letters, "Inevitably becomes sumo," confirming that any true clash of giants ends up as sumo at its core. An extreme close-up full spread panel. Oliva's massive fist connects squarely with Sukune's face, blood and saliva exploding outward in all directions from the impact, rendered in brutal, visceral detail. Oliva's eyes go wide with shock. Then we see his mawashi being grabbed and tear. Sukune has seized Oliva's mawashi and is ripping it apart with raw force. The chapter ends on this stunning reversal, with a note, "To be continued in issue number 1.